Good morning on behalf of Bank, and of course thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here. As you know, Bank is a national, I will say, promotional and development bank of Slovenia, very similar to activities of that what the EIB is doing on European level. On the top of that, we are doing also insurance business, but we are 100 times smaller than EIB, just to have impression about that what we are. Of course, we are trying to do the same things, but I will start with one thing which you all know, namely the basis for the banking business is trust. You all know that we bankers, we are holders of others' money. So we are all the time doing only one thing, that is building trust on both sides of our balance. Our service is, in fact, buying and selling trust. And of course, this crisis could be also described as problem in trust, or in this kind of, let me say, confident or things that are around the trust. Namely, if you look, just one example. For example, if you look total debt of countries around the world, you will see figures which are surprising, namely the total debt, that means state debt, private and household debt together, is much bigger in some countries than in Greece, which is now in main crisis. That means, in fact, that the basis for that is trust, and other countries doesn't have this problem. What that means, in fact, is that, in fact, we are more or less in behavioral finance. That decisions are not made on a rational basis so much as it was before. We are making our decisions more on emotional basis. And I think this is maybe one of the topics we can touch today. Then we as a bank, of course, we are trying to re-establish the trust in Slovenian economy and, of course, in Slovenian banking system with our, let me say, very strong anti-cyclical role. What we are doing, as it was already described by Mr. Rob, we are major players in, let me say, ensuring Slovenian banking system and companies funds. Of course, these funds are liquidity funds. They are coming from abroad. And of course, for that reason, there is very important what kind of rating we have, and of course, what kind of rating have Slovenian country. We did in past pre-crisis year more than 3 billion euros funding, or on the other side, of course, financing in Slovenian economy, and we are sure that this limited the, let me say, the consequences of this credit crisis in Slovenia very strongly. In some period of time, there was 90% of all new funds coming from the seed bank in Slovenian economy. And that means, in fact, that we have had very, very important role in rebuilding or staying the trust level of Slovenian economy. I will say just 3 words or 3 points about that, what I personally believe is most important for Slovenian economy, and of course also for the bankers in Slovenia to rebuild this trust in these tough times. The first point which I see is, of course, that we have to find the way of, let me say, new thinking to build the new risk management models. And of course, that means building new business models on all levels, especially in the level of companies. Because if we don't do that, we are not adapting ourselves to the new reality. We have to admit that the old times, let me say, the times of debt culture will not come again. And I'm sure that this is the main, I will say, topic of most of Slovenian companies. There are, of course, a lot of Slovenian companies and also the banks, they're already doing these things, or they already done, and they are very successful. But I still believe that we need, I will say, new business models, because only these new business models will bring new products and, of course, also new working places. I'm sure that there is no, sure that there's no right way to wait and see what the state will do, or what kind of decision or right decision will be done, because that is just losing the time. I'm sure that we have to act on all levels, and especially on the levels of companies. Of course, Seed Bank is preparing some instruments. They are also very familiar to that, what was also presented before by EIB, who could support that kind of change, or let me say, building or introduction of new models. The second very important topic which I see is that, of course, Slovenia, as a very open economy, has to see their own things more, I will say, on global basis. Namely, we need diversification of our exports. We are morely orientated in the neighborhood countries and EU, but these countries are in this particular moment lack of growth. So I think that is one way how we can provide our, I will say, possible diversification of the exports. And of course, we are also supporting that kind of activities. Nevertheless, there are a lot of opportunities, not only in Middle East and Asia, but also in other countries. And I think this change is needed. Last but not least, I think it's necessary to change also the way of financing in Slovenia, especially the way how we are financing our development. Up to now, more or less, the development were financed through either subsidiaries, grants, or some additional, I will say, credits. We do believe that the most important things is because the grants and subsidies in European levels are now not anymore available, or are, I will say, much lower than were before. We have to combine these things with credits and make so-called financial engineering. The EIB is a very good example for that, what is possible to do on European level, of course, also in other countries. And I'm sure that Slovenia didn't use up to now these kinds of instruments enough. And this could build or rebuild the trust and confidence in Slovenian economy from one side, and of course, from other side, building the new models. I will end this part with my personal view that if we will not change, I will say, those kind of debt culture to sustainable culture of financing, we will not be able to rebuild the trust in Slovenian economy. And I'm sure that, of course, if we will do that, then we will come from so-called consumer society to what is called also on European level knowledge society, which is needed to have new position in the global world and to have competition which will bring us on the level which allowed us also to raise money on international markets. And there is coming also the ratings of Slovenia and Slovenian banks. Because without these ratings, we are lost. You know that it was already said, I mean, what about the investment lastly, or some years ago? But of course, it is very important that each year in Slovenia, we are lack of 20 to 25% of our own capital. We cannot raise enough capital in Slovenia. So we need to rebuild the trust in Slovenian economy on ways I mentioned. Of course, there are also other things, I mean, with other, let me say, structural reforms and, of course, public finance. But this is the basis for that we can gain additional foreign funds and foreign investment, which could help us to bring new investment in Slovenia and to make a new sustainable development.